So when it comes to Ethernet cables, we use a standard called the ANSI TIA 568. Within that standard, there are two different pinouts, or pins in a connector to wires in a cable assignments, that we can use. The first option is T568A, and the second is T568B. And the only difference between 568A and 568B is that order of the wire pairs in the Ethernet cable. The T568A pinout has you placing the green pair of wires first and then the orange pair, whereas the T568B pinout has the exact opposite. You're using the orange pair first, followed by the green. The order of the wiring standard doesn't make a difference in the actual performance of the cable. In that way, they're entirely the same. However, the order of the wire pairs does have an effect on backwards compatibility with older technologies. T568A has the advantage of being the most backwards compatible of the two, with other pin designations that are defined by Universal Service Order Codes, or USOC. USOC is a group of specifications developed by Bell Systems in the 90s. It basically defines the wiring when used for things like landline telephones and fax machines, older technology for us now. For example, you might be familiar with the RJ11 jack. That is one of them. So T568A is most backwards compatible with these technologies as opposed to T568B, because if you compare the wiring schemes, it has two pairs that match two pairs within the USOC wiring scheme, whereas T568B only has one. For this reason, and possibly others, a lot of government contracts today still require T568A wiring specifically. But in your home, for your own use, T568B is fine. T568B became popular for one reason or another back in the 90s as well, and it's just sort of worked on inertia since then. For your home network, it's fine to use B, unless you're going to be using a fax machine or a landline telephone anytime soon. In that case, you should just stick with A. Just keep in mind, if you've got a home with a setup that you didn't do yourself, you really want to make sure that you know whether or not things are wired for 568A or B, because you really do not want to have T568A in some places and T568B in others. This can lead to a lot of problems in your home network. It's not going to work properly. And by that I mean it's going to disrupt the signal strength. You're going to have a lot of issues. Generally, here are the recommendations from the professional world. If you're going from the ground up and you're building something, when installing in a residential setting, just use T568A. If voice and data wiring already exists there, just repeat whatever that is regardless. One other important thing to note, if for whatever reason you have two devices on your network that don't use auto MDIX and they need to connect to each other, and they are both the same transmit and receive pairs on both sides, meaning they're both MDI or both MDIX, you will need to use a crossover cable in between them. A crossover cable is actually a cable with T568A on one end and T568B on the other. A straight-through cable would have one of them on both sides. The most common flavor of commercially available Ethernet cables, which are mostly straight-through these days, is T568B, so keep that in mind as well. I don't know if this helps much more or if this is beating a dead horse, but let me just show you one of my cables. So you can see how the orange pair is first. That is indicative of T568B. And if you look at both ends of the cable here, you can see that they both have T568B going on. So just like many other commercially available Ethernet cables, this one is a straight-through cable terminated with T568B.